Subscribe to LearnCab and hit the bell icon to get notified.
Hello friends, welcome to chapter 4 in business environment, which is all about the recent and emerging trends in business. Now this chapter is a combination of many frequent and recent trends in business which has affected our day-to-day lives as a customer and how these trends are impacting the way organizations are doing business and selling products to us. Now every business's main requirement is to keep their customers up to date and educated about their product. Therefore, each customer has to constantly be interacting with the different varieties of information that a business provides you with. So the need for these trends in today's world is to mainly make sure that the customer does not move on to another competitor's product and making sure that the customer always chooses your business's product first. So let's look into the first trend in this chapter, which is called as franchising. Franchising refers to the specific right given by a business to another business to sell its product or service in a particular geographical area. So this is basically adapting a successful business to another geographical area. That is basically what franchising is all about. Best example of franchising model used in today's businesses is McDonald's and KFC. The main features of franchising are as follows. The franchisor is the right giver. So the franchisor gives the right to the franchisee to do many things. The first amongst them is the franchisee will be given the right to use the franchisor's intellectual property, technical know-how, the way of doing business, and the trademarks and other rights. So the franchisee uses the franchisor's intellectual property rights and technical know-how to do business. Number two, the franchisee follows the exact business model and the way the franchisor conducts business to the T. There is no deviation as such, therefore the operations will remain the same. The third being that the franchisee receives from the franchisor all the technology associated with selling this particular product in that particular new geographical area, and also receives the marketing support and the personnel training required to train the staff of the franchisee. So basically, entire process of running a business is transferred from the franchisor to the franchisee. The franchisor receives what is known as a royalty. This royalty will be paid by the franchisee generally on an annual basis. This is the fee is given to adopt the successful business model of the franchisor. Now let's look at what are some of the advantages of franchising. The first amongst those being the biggest advantage that any franchisor will have, and that is expansion of business. A franchisor cannot go to every country and set up its branch or subsidiary because that involves a huge cost. If they adopt franchising, at a fraction of the cost, you can actually sell your products in multiple geographical areas at the same time. Also, this helps the franchisor to improve and increase his distribution system and expand it to various areas and to new customers who have not experienced that particular product or service. This also helps in the franchisor getting a constant and immediate feedback about his product's popularity in other geographical areas. Also, it helps in receiving feedback on what the customer prefers or needs in that particular geographical area, and it helps the franchisor to adapt to the needs of this particular area. As a result of all of this, it significantly improves the goodwill and reputation of the franchisor quite significantly amongst the population. These franchisors get an overall brand acceptance wherein any new market they enter, their brand is already built and they can expand quite easily. Also, the franchising agreement gives the franchisor basic protection against his intellectual property rights. With the help of clauses like the confidentiality clause and non-disclosure clauses, the franchising agreement will go a long way in protecting the rights of the franchisor. Now, are there no advantages to the franchisee at all? There are. The biggest advantage being the franchisees are adopting an already successful business model, as a result of which there is a significantly higher chance of obtaining success. And since the franchisee is receiving technical support, marketing support, and all sorts of personnel training and assistance, the chances of failure of this project is quite low. And since the franchisors generally have a high degree of quality control, it helps in serving good quality products to the local customers in that particular geographical area, as a result of which there is a high degree of customer satisfaction. Also, franchisors make sure that they do not sell multiple franchises in the same geographical area or vicinity. So this gives some sort of exclusivity to the franchisee to be assured that in that particular geographical area there will not be competition from the same franchisor's other franchisees. Now, even though this is a successful model to adopt, there are some disadvantages associated with franchising. The first one being the franchisee copying the entire business model and starting a competing business or passing off that idea to other persons without the knowledge of the franchisor. Franchising agreements can only go a certain way in protecting the intellectual property rights. Since these are two completely different geographical areas involved, franchisees may sometimes end up copying the business ideas of the franchisors for their own gains. Many times what happens is franchisees are unable to maintain the same level of quality and efficiency that the franchisor's original business model had. This might result in the franchisor losing a lot of money by way of this franchising agreement and leading to a lot of dilution in the brand's goodwill also. Since the franchisor has to constantly provide assistance, technical support, marketing support to the franchisee, it might end up incurring significant costs and expenses to support this franchisee's business in that particular area, which might end up resulting in an overall loss to the franchisor in the long run. Now, since the franchisee is adopting the business model of the franchisor, he has to adopt it to the T, and there cannot be any deviations from the business model approved by the franchisor. You cannot modify the products, you cannot sell new products without the approval of the franchisor. That leads to a lot of restriction in the overall business operations of the franchisee. The need for constant approvals is such a time-consuming process that a lot of critical decisions cannot be taken when the time arises, as a result of which some franchisees might lose upon critical business opportunities which require quick thinking. Also, the requirement for paying royalty to the franchisor constantly results in a big cash crunch for the franchisee. Whether the business is successful or not, you have to constantly pay royalty fee to the franchisor. Also, if there are conflicts in how you want to run the business and how the franchisor wants you to run the business, it might ultimately lead to litigation, which is quite a time-consuming and expensive process for the franchisee. So let's look at what are the key differences between the franchising model, the agency dealership model, and starting a subsidiary or joint venture in a country. All of these are basically for selling your product in that particular area. So in terms of financial risk, franchising, the financial risk is quite low because you are not really associated entities. Agencies and distributorship are the least financially risky because the agency or dealer has to completely bear the risk of any financial loss of selling your product. You have no connection with that agency or dealer apart from giving the distributorship to that particular dealer. Whereas if it's joint venture or subsidiary, since you are setting up the entire subsidiary or joint venture, the financial risk is significantly larger compared to a franchising model. In terms of control, there is quite a lot of control exercised by the franchisor over the franchisee. In the franchising model, there is no control exercised in dealership or distributorship agreement because those two are independent entities and you cannot exercise any control over them as a business. If you are running a subsidiary or joint venture, you have absolute control in terms of a subsidiary and you have significant control in terms of a joint venture in the business decisions that each of you make. So very high control is existing in the subsidiary or joint venture style of business. Let's move on to the second recent trend which we are going to cover in this chapter, and that is called as an aggregator. Aggregator is basically a computer website or an application which collects or combines different homogeneous information from around the World Wide Web and presents it to the viewer in an aggregated form so that you can make better and more informed decisions. It collects the same kind of information but from multiple different sources and aggregates it in one place, thereby making your decision making that much more easier. And let's look at some of the major types of aggregators which are available today. The first and most common type of aggregator which you might have come across in India is the service aggregator. The prime example of those being the taxi service aggregator, which is Uber and Ola. These guys aggregate different taxi drivers, different auto drivers in the country, and they provide you a service of giving you access to them at your fingertips by way of an app. There are also search aggregators using what is called as RSS, really simple syndication. Now, these RSS feeds will pull information from different websites and send it to you by way of update. So if you have subscribed to the RSS feed of a particular website, whenever any website gives you new information, you don't have to go and search for it. That will automatically hit your RSS feed and you get the information up to dated on your email. So it's very easy to access. The third type of aggregator being the social aggregator. They aggregate the different feeds and update from various different social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. Prime example of these being Cloze, CLOZE, and Twine Social, which also give you the same functionality of giving you updates from various different social media platforms at one location. News aggregators are also quite common and quite efficient in giving you various different newses from various different sources at one location. Some of my favorites include Feedly, which gives you different news sources aggregated into one location. Video aggregator apps, as soon as I say video, the first thing which would have popped up in your mind is probably YouTube. Yes, that was the original video aggregator, but now many video aggregators are pulling videos from YouTube and curating it for you so that you can watch specific content without really searching for the same. A prime example of that being WatchUp. Polling aggregators are also gaining importance in the tumultuous political situations prevailing in many countries. So these polling aggregators will give you results of certain polls which is taken, giving you answers to what the public is generally feeling. Will Narendra Modi win the next general elections and become the prime minister? This could be a question which could be answered on websites like 538.com. There are many shopping aggregators also who combine the prices of various different products and then give you the best possible price for you to buy from. Apps like NextTag comparing various different websites and giving you the real-time product and pricing information from various different shopping websites and help you in your shopping needs. The last one being the review aggregators, which is not really covered in your syllabus, but these are picking up quite a lot of steam of late. These give you various reviews which have been given on a particular film or on a particular website, and they give you an overall opinion on the basis of reviews given by the public. So Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic are some of the best examples of review aggregators. Now, as you have seen, there are so many different types of aggregators which exist today. You would have come to know that the rise of aggregators has been driven by quite a few significant factors which has made these aggregators very popular today. The first one being the significant rise in demand for these kind of specific aggregation websites which give you very specific information and collect information from multiple sources. So these aggregator apps, the demand for this has been constantly increasing. Aggregator apps do what traditional journalists used to do back in the day. They give you the overall opinion on a particular product, service, or a person. So that is almost replacing the traditional journalism, and these aggregator websites are serving the needs of the people based on what the people want from them. Since they have such a wide reach, aggregator websites do a very good job in collecting data from multiple different sources, which is called as syndication, and this results in reaching quite a larger audience compared to taking information from one particular website. Aggregator websites also give you one very interesting tool which can help you in collecting different types of data. It aggregates different types of feeds, let it be XML files or HTML files. All of these can be aggregated into a single aggregator application. Now, it's not all rosy for these aggregator apps because there are some problems or disadvantages for these aggregator apps. The first one being the cutthroat competition which already exists in these different types of aggregation scenarios which we came across. Aggregator apps, by collecting different data and giving it to you in one source, is only going to intensify the competition even more, because now at the click of a button you know which is the best price for a particular product or which is the best movie to go currently which is showing in theaters near you. So since there is such a cutthroat competition already, the aggregator apps are only going to intensify it furthermore and giving the customer, the ultimate king, more cost benefits in the long run. But it is a challenge for the existing businesses if the competition intensifies. Since there are newer technological formats which are getting evolved every day, it becomes difficult for the aggregator websites to be up to date with all of them. Some of them might be good in giving you text-based data on a web page, but not all of them can give you video or media-based content on their website. So adapting to newer formats and technological changes is a challenge for these aggregator applications. Also, since you have to crawl and collect information from such a huge variety of websites and web pages, there is a significant investment involved in running and maintaining an aggregator application. Now let's look at the third trend which is going to be part of this chapter, and that is process outsourcing. Now when I say process outsourcing, something might not strike a chord, but when I say BPO, you will remember it. won't you? So BPO, basically, which stands for Business Process Outsourcing, is one of the types of process outsourcing which is very famous in India. The other two being KPO, Knowledge Process Outsourcing, and LPO, Legal Process Outsourcing. So what is this process outsourcing? This is basically outsourcing any particular business function, whether at the back end or at the front end, and making sure that you are giving that outsourced process to a specialized team which is going to deliver you what you require as a business. Now, what is the need for outsourcing in today's business environment? The first one being specialized performance. Any process that you outsource will be outsourced only to a team which is having specialized knowledge in delivering that particular service to you. Therefore, you will always get much better quality than if you had done it in-house. Also, when you are outsourcing it to an external team of people, whether they are in the same country or outside in some other country, they will always give you some economies of scale, and they will always give you some economies of cost also, because when you're outsourcing, one of the major criteria is to give it to a specialized team, but at a cost which would be lower than if you had done the same process in-house. As a result of these 3 points, you are achieving what is the optimum utilization of available resources. Your operations will be significantly smoother. You can now focus on the bigger tasks and the more important tasks which are required for your business, that is business expansion and growth. So what are some of the advantages of a BPO? First one obviously being the flexibility of operations. Since you are giving it to an external team, you can guide them and you can ask them to deliver the output as per your requirement. And since you are giving it to an external team, most of the time you will give it to a team which is more cost effective in nature. So you are saving a lot of money by outsourcing services. Since a specialized team is working on your particular product or service, that helps them in focusing much more than if you yourself had worked on that same product. So increased focus is also an added advantage for BPOs. As a result of these 3 points, there is significantly more chances of faster deliverables and the customers and clients being more happier with your overall product or service. All of this ultimately leads to the growth of your business because you are now being more profitable. And since you are outsourcing it to a specialized team, you are only using the best available skilled manpower for these processes, and you can train internally your existing employees and get the processes back after outsourcing it for a short duration. That does not mean that BPOs have no disadvantages at all. The first and foremost being the communication challenges associated with this type of a business. If you are directly communicating with your customer, then you will obviously be able to serve them better. Since you're trusting a third party to do the same, there could be challenges associated with it. And you going back and forth with the customer, then going back to your BPO partner, all of this will create more and more confusion because of the way BPOs are designed to function. Also, many of these BPOs are offshore BPOs being they exist in a different country compared to your own. So there is a problem of syncing the time zones. So they will be in a different time zone, you will be in a different one. The BPO which is functioning will be not able to serve your customers when the actual need arises. Since you're outsourcing certain business functions to these BPOs, you are losing some degree of control over how that particular process is managed, and businesses sometimes will tend to lose some customers as a result of this loss of control, because this will also result in some misunderstanding in the long run. Many times you will realize that customers are always a novice, and your efforts to satisfy the customer by using BPOs, customer care functions, KPOs and LPOs will ultimately not satisfy the ultimate need, and the project will go haywire anyways. There can be so many more problems like contractual disputes, different types of service levels which you fail to meet, different unforeseen circumstances, and continuously changing environment at both the BPO's end and at your end. All of this may contribute to your business being unstable for a long duration as a result of your processes being outsourced. Now let's look at the different types of process outsourcing which are covered in this chapter. I'm going to summarize all of this at one heading. These are common for both KPOs, LPOs and all BPOs. The first one is on the basis of what type of function you are outsourcing. So you could either outsource back office functions or front office functions. Back office outsourcing basically outsources functions like finance, HR, etc., which are handled at the back end. Front office outsourcing basically outsources front office functions like customer relations and investor relations, etc. On the basis of the location of the process outsourcing partner, first one being offshore outsourcing is where the BPO which is supporting you is not located in the same country. Whereas if you're doing nearshore outsourcing, you are outsourcing your business processes to a partner who's in the neighboring country. Onshore outsourcing, on the other hand, means that you are outsourcing your business functions to a BPO which is based in the same country as you are. And captive outsourcing basically refers to that type of unique outsourcing where you as the main entity, set up different branches all across the world, and hire the local talent from those particular countries to help you serve the customers in that particular country relating to your original business. The best example of this being Ernst & Young. Let's look at KPOs, which are knowledge process outsourcing. In simple words, KPO is a BPO with greater business insight and a much more trained and specialized workforce. Best examples of KPOs being Genpact and WPS from India. So BPOs generally end up reducing the cost and also increase the productivity. KPOs not only reduce cost and increase productivity, but also provide much better business insight, and they have a much more experienced workforce. That is why we have the formula KPO is equal to BPO plus greater business insight plus far more experienced workforce. Many different areas of KPOs come to mind whenever we discuss this. The first one being LPOs themselves, which are the legal process outsourcing functions, where the legal functions are outsourced to a different process outsourcing partner. Intellectual property rights related outsourcing also happens in the country. Life science related services are also outsourced. All of these, if you notice, require quite a significantly skilled and knowledgeable workforce to deliver the particular process efficiently to the customers. These are not simple processes like customer care or HR and finance, etc. Let's look at some of the advantages of the KPO. Since you are outsourcing some critical knowledge-based process to an external service provider, again, one of the key factors for you to do that will be the cost effectiveness. So if you have to run the same process in-house, that will be much more expensive for you to manage. That is predominantly the reason why KPOs exist, and one of the leading KPO hubs in the world is India. If you have to outsource a particular process, you will have to always look at the knowledge pool and the human resources pool available in that particular country, both of which is abundantly available in India. And since you are accessing the best available human resource pool, you get significant advantages of giving better customer satisfaction. Most of the KPOs use standard best quality software for delivering services to the clients and customers in that particular area. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the quality of service. You will always get best quality service from all of these KPOs. Now let's look at e-commerce, which is one of the last few trends which are remaining in this chapter. E-commerce, as you already know, is basically a set of transactions which is happening using the World Wide Web. And using the World Wide Web, these transactions help in connecting the various businesses and customers with each other. Processing of transactions and making sure the transactions are happening on time with the help of text, visual and audio media is what is basically called as e-commerce. E-commerce includes not just buying and selling of goods, but also buying and selling of information and buying and selling of services. So services can be bought and sold through various different services based websites like matrimonial websites and job placement based websites like Naukri.com, which gives you specific job placement services or matrimonial services as the case may be. So you can not only buy and sell goods, you can buy and sell information and services through e-commerce. E-commerce can be classified into four major categories. Number one being business to business, where two businesses interact with each other and they end up serving each other's need. B2C, where business directly interacts with the customer. Example of this would be websites like Flipkart, Amazon, etc. C2C is where customer interacts with another customer to satisfy each other's need. Prime example of this being OLX or Quikr. And the last one being consumer to business, where the customer interacts with the business. So business to business is known as B2B, business to customer or consumer is called as B2C, consumer to consumer is called as C2C, and consumer to business is called as C2B. Now let's look at some of the advantages of e-commerce. Since you are running your business online, it helps you reach a far wider and global audience. Far more customers to serve than if you had a physical shop. Setting up a physical shop is far more expensive than having an online shop set up for selling goods, services, or information. So the overall cost of setting up a business is much lower online. Since you're operating online, you can easily contact other delivery partners and deliver your products in a much more faster manner. Rather than wait for a purchase order to reach you over mail or letter and then respond to it, over letter will take quite a lot of days to process. E-commerce will give you instant access to customers who give you instant feedback and place instant orders with you, which you can deliver instantly. As a result of all of this, the business is saving a lot of time and effort in managing its resources, and it becomes far more efficient and profitable in the long run. E-commerce also has that advantage of being operable 24/7. So you don't have a downtime, your shop does not close, you can continue to take orders at any point of the day as long as you have a functioning e-commerce website. Since you can manage your business online, you can also interact with your suppliers in a quick manner and manage your supplies quickly through the e-commerce portal. Since you are having an online presence, you will have as a customer far more choices to choose from if you're buying a product from an e-commerce website. If you go to a physical shop, it will have limited stocks and limited available options for the customer. As a result of this, the customer is far more satisfied and he can sit at home and browse through different catalogs before he orders. He can also compare different prices using various aggregator websites, which we saw in the earlier part of the chapter. So customer convenience is far more in e-commerce. And since the customer is directly contacting the business, elimination of middlemen and elimination of middlemen related cost is a big advantage to both the business and the consumer. Since the business can grow and be profitable in e-commerce far more easier, it helps them to launch newer products far more easily. Classic example of this would be the various launch day products which you will get on famous e-commerce websites in India like Flipkart and Amazon. So you might see Apple might launch on one website, other brands like Samsung and Sony might launch on the other website. So there is healthy competition and it helps these companies to launch new products online. That does not mean that e-commerce does not come with fair share of disadvantages too. You still have to set up a website, you still have to have a good domain, you will have to have a secure domain, you should have to set up the payment related functionality on your website. All of this involves a higher initial startup costs compared to setting up a physical shop, which does not require all of these ancillaries like connection to internet, various hardware and software requirements like maintaining a computer and server. And the maintenance of this hardware and software components is also a constant cost related disadvantage associated with e-commerce. Since there are so many e-commerce websites, there is a high risk of failure also. Every website cannot succeed. That is a reality here too. Constant training of your staff to adapt to the changing needs of the customer becomes really important in e-commerce, and maintenance of the website with constant fresh update to the stock, making sure that you follow what the customer needs, will become quite a time consuming process for the business in the long run. If you can be up to date with it, then your business will definitely succeed. Sometimes you will receive so many orders in e-commerce that you will not be able to fulfill the orders, which will lead to cancellations and customer dissatisfaction. Since you are operating and interacting with the customer through a website only, there is no personal touch involved, which some of the customers prefer in buying certain types of product. If you are selling that type of a product, then e-commerce is not advisable to you. In spite of e-commerce's various advantages, people today are still a little resistant to visit a website and completely trust a web page to give them good quality products. There are many scams which occur in the country which dissuade these customers to actually go visit a physical shop rather than purchase things online. Just because of the convenience factor involved, some customers actually end up buying things online. So that might not be useful for the business in the long run because it is not a really sustainable model. One of the last few trends remaining in the chapter is the digital economy. Now, digital economy is nothing but the aggregation of all of these other recent trends that we've just seen. Digital economy is nothing but the existence of e-commerce websites, the existence of BPOs, KPOs, and LPOs, along with aggregator websites at the same place digitally, which is accessible 24/7. So it is the economy where all the transactions happen digitally over internet. That is what is called as the digital economy. There are some advantages to the digital economy. The first one being the growing use of internet and growing adoption of internet, especially in a country like India, where more and more people are getting on board the internet access bandwagon. So since more and more people are joining this particular digital India, being part of the digital economy is far more easier today than it was, let's say, 10 years earlier. And since more and more people are using the internet, the digital economy is becoming more and more secure and safe and cost effective for the consumer. Because of e-commerce increasing so exponentially in the last few years, digital economy is a reality in today's consumer requirements. No consumer will just visit a physical shop today and buy what is available directly in just a few seconds. So e-commerce and its growth has contributed hugely to the growth of the digital economy. Since all these products are delivered by suppliers and courier agencies, the gap between the customer and the business is very less. Anybody can contact any website just by writing an email or just by providing a feedback on their website. So the delivery of goods and services has significantly shortened in duration, as a result of which most of these businesses in the digital economy are continuing to grow. Last but not the least, as a result of the digital economy, there is far greater transparency in operations, far more constructive feedback, far cheaper products which are available to the customer whenever they need, irrespective of how far the shop is located from you physically. There are some associated disadvantages with the digital economy too. The first one being the significant loss of jobs. Second being very few digital experts actually exist in India. So there is a propensity for some of these digital economy based websites to scam the customer. So you have to be really careful before trusting any website to buy something on it. India by default has not fully reached its true internet potential. So that becomes one more reason for the digital economy not quite fully being developed in this country. Digital economy requires a strong infrastructure, right from the availability of internet with high speed, constant availability of servers with access, constant availability of websites to purchase things from. All of this becomes a strong requirement for an economy to exist digitally, and that right now in India is not to its full potential. Last but not the least, there are two more concepts which are left, one being incubators and the second being asset light model. Incubators are basically those entities which help startups in achieving their full potential. They help in accelerating the growth and success of various entrepreneurial ventures. They provide a variety of physical resources and support so that a new venture can succeed. They literally handhold and support the new venture so that they can reach their true potential. Asset light model is a very new concept wherein businesses which were previously required to set up a new venture would ideally have to invest a lot of money in purchasing the land or space for setting up that particular business. That is no longer needed because under the asset light model, any business can take a place from the owner of that particular location, and instead of buying the place from them, they get into an agreement where whatever profits arise from the business which is set up in that location will be shared by way of a percentage with the person whose land on which they have set up the business. So till the business continues, until the business is profitable, the person who owns the land continues to get a percentage of profits from the particular business, and he continues to be the owner of the land. For the business, the biggest advantage is significant reduction in cost. No need to invest on real estate, no need to invest on building plant and machinery as such, no need to invest on land purchase majorly.
Subscribe to LearnCab and hit the bell icon to get notified.